Hi there girly boys! This will be a draft, so not really a main video. It's just a kind of a intro for my new series about LGBT community. So here I will have especially just some kind of ideas about why diversity is seen different in Eastern Europe and why peoples don't really understand that each individual have a different persona. So, if we are looking at this map of LGBTQ rights in Europe, we see that something is actually very odd in the East. And I wonder what this red color reminds me of? Yes, when I say East Europe, I say former communist states. And not all of them have the color red. But we all know that if something is colored in red, or it's pointed as a red zone, we should not put our foot there, because it's dangerous. But what is happening in the rest of the East? Because as we see in the West, the situation is pretty clear. Like we have blue and light blue, which means that things are going in the right direction for the LGBTQ. But we also have some places where data is not available because of various things. And probably the main thing is that those countries doesn't even want to hear things about LGBTQ. Hey, do you want to hear a LGBTQ story? Never! Also, most of those ex-Iron Curtain states have decriminalized same-sexual activity from the 90s and some from the 2000s. So yeah, actually this might sound very late, but it's better than some states in the USA though. But why is that? And why things like this were not allowed in the past? I mean, in Chechnya, for example, or Chechen, I think, I don't know how it's pronounced in this English language, you can be tortured for being gay. Yes, in 2020. And it's not the only place on the earth with this weird thinking. But why such things happened back in the day, also in those Soviet countries or those communist countries? Well, let me tell you a story about God and also about communism. Two things that actually cannot exist at the same time, says the party. But even if they try to hide some churches and monastery, I mean the regime tried to do this, and they try to do some anti-religious propaganda, mostly of the Eastern Europe is still a mix of religion and communism. For example, dictators like Ceausescu in Romania was promoted some sort of nationalism, communism that was based on the traditionalist thinking. They even resurrected the Romanian ancient ancestors for propaganda and made some stories about them that are still believed today. And of course, for some, God was replaced with the dictator himself. And communism became some sort of religion in every country because they promote atheism in school. So you have to believe in the dictator. And of course, because back then the borders was close in the Eastern European bloc, propaganda of the party was easy to be spread, even if communism don't look the same in all countries. I mean, songs about the dictators and how the children are grateful to the party and the state were a common thing. And this thing raised some sort of nationalism in every citizen's heart. Also, another fact is that in many parts at school, children had a course named Science of Socialism and Citizenship. Also, many teachers linked the bourgeoisie's time and homosexuals together as some kind of thread. So homosexuality was seen as something like bourgeoisie degeneracy. Also, because was interdicted by law to have same-sex intercourses, every gay person was actually born as a criminal in those states. And obviously, as you probably know already, in any totalitarian regime, normality is the main word. So anything that was out of common in that time was a threat for the state and for the party. especially things like LGBTQ ideology that is still considered actually to be a propaganda from the West today in some Eastern European countries. Now, normality is also a word that we hear a lot in religion. Because as we know, Christianity is not diversity's best friend. Many countries from the Eastern Bloc are Orthodox, but also some are Catholic. I know that the Pope has recognized LGBTQ persons as the sons of God, but on the other hand, Orthodox Church is far from doing that. Now, religion in general has this affinity to the past values and tradition. And also, the center of both religion and communism was actually the family. And of course, the idea of having children as family was very important for the party because you have new workforces and new people that were living in the spirit of the propaganda. I can also say that for the Christianity, the idea was the same. More believers means more crowdfunding, more money, and also, if we are going back to the Crusades, more army. But because communism and religion cannot coexist at the time, most of the priests were in the opposition of the regime and had a connection with far-right movements, hiding themselves in forests, but most of them get caught by the party. But on the other hand, some priests were snitched their believers to the party and become informers in exchange of privileges, but mainly they were part of the resistance. Now, the resistance wasn't too open-minded either. In most countries, they were past members of some kind of fascist movements that took place before and in the time of the Second World War. And again, the idea of family and anti-diversity was actually a common thing for all those three ideologies. Now, another thing is that family is also seen as a result of the patriarchal society. And also, besides some love stories, if you ask me, it seems that in our lifetime as a human beings, marriage was resulted from the society's pressure and not from love actually. So, yeah. Because we know that for hundreds of years most of the marriages were actually arranged by the family. So it was something like, my family said that you are beautiful, so I have to say this too to you, so would you stay with me, my mom, my dad, and my grandma, and my 3 cousins? Yes, because family was huge back then, and many people stayed in the same house, working the same land, and provide for the family. Also, it's weird that in Christianity, family is seen as a very important thing, even if God and Jesus didn't actually have a family. I mean, God was an orphan, for sure, because he was the only one in the universe, and Jesus was God's son. But at one point God had a holiday in heaven and he never comes back to earth, so Jesus has to be adopted by some strangers, and after he was trained for 33 years, he joins his dad in his beautiful holiday in heaven. But yeah, family was very important and is still important, but now has evolved into something different in many parts of the world. But because many Eastern Europe can keep up with changes, they resume this evolution of the family to the value of the family is threatened by neo-Marxism and gender ideology. First of all, you have to know that this type of idea is massively spread by the church and now by the populist parties. And also, many of those populist parties in Eastern Europe have some links to the past communist parties. And what do churches and parties need for surviving? Well, people. Because, of course, if they don't have people, they will starve to death. So, because the idea of the imaginary enemy worked in the past communist regimes, it's likely that can work now too. Especially because if you look at the most post-communist states, even in the democratic era, citizens voted for past members of the party because they were educated to like this typology of leader and it's hard to cure countries after 5 decades of the same regime. And what is this kind of leader saying? Well, that the threats are coming from outside the country, especially from the West. Threats such refugees, that actually they are coming from the East, and they will do, I don't know, murders, and they steal jobs from the people from the country, and also other threats such as homosexuals that are coming to take family values and Christian values. Because this is what people that are coming from outside do. They are coming to steal things. And this kind of speech sadly will get more votes that will get the one about giving minorities rights. Because sadly some people don't understand that giving rights doesn't mean taking rights from others. So what's the point of this video? Well, European Union wants to be a safe place actually for LGBTQ community, and they demand members to do things in this regard. For example, a law for civil unions, where such a law doesn't exist. But in some places like Poland, Romania, Bulgaria and Hungary, this will not be easy at all, because of the past history in some cases. And when it comes to Poland and Hungary, the past seems to be actually the present. So yeah, this was some kind of introduction to the subject of LGBTQ rights in Eastern Europe, and I hope that I will speak more about this. Of course, maybe some things that I've said were wrong, so it's possible, so you can correct me in the comment section. Also, if I mispronounce some words, it's because I'm not a native speaker, and also if you like what I do and this kind of videos and the other videos that I've done, you can subscribe to my channel, like this video and support me on Patreon, that is in the description below. Till next time, take care of yourself and stay awesome!